I think there's an opening for all kinds of photographers these days, and there's a wide range of clients too. So it's how do you find your people? If you really work on how you listen to people and how you talk to people and how you feel their vibe and what are they feeling? That's sort of the main skill of a great photographer I've found. I'm really taking it to this level, a serious level of responsibility for me to not play it safe. I meet a lot of young photographers who have great empathy and great insight and great subtlety, and I think it's a really powerful skill these days. It's really that core thing that you are letting me into the most intimate day of your life. I'm going to treat you well. I'm not going to nickel and dime you. It's like, I want it to be this business love fest, but more love fest than business.
People are just so thankful that you see them and are able to bring value to what they value. And it's I love seeing value as it's the distance or the transformation of almost teleporting someone from point A to point B of where they want to be. And your service is a vehicle that takes them there. Welcome to another episode. Today, I got an awesome guest. Probably one of the coolest parts is that we share a name, kind of. So we have John Dolan, amazing photographer, but we met in Santa Barbara at the Kinetic event a couple months ago, and actually, I think the first time we started chatting was at one of the icebreakers. We were all sitting together, and I remember looking at the list and I saw that you're going to be there. I'm like, okay, cool. Someone who's has this career very established, and I just remember being so struck by you had this joy exuding. You just were so happy to be there. And it's cool to have someone who's a speaker, and we're all in the same room, and it didn't feel like we have people this I don't know, power struggle. It was just you showed up so authentically, and it was really cool to just chat and get to know. And
those are my people. Wedding people are my people.
I love it. And I loved how you came up and showed up, and we had a lot of great conversations, whether it's in the pool, giving me swim lessons for our 2-year-old, which was fun. Yeah. And we got awesome weather that week. But just wanted to, thank you for just being such an awesome, kind person, and taking the time to show up today.
Well, it's fun to teach kids to swim too. Whenever you get a chance with somebody else's kid.
Oh,
here you go.
It was. I'm pretty sure it was our younger daughter, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, because we have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old is a little bit. She kind of liked the lounge chair with her lemonade or whatever. She was tanning, but the 2-year-old is let's swim, and it was so much fun. It's fun too having someone who being because you have 3 kids.
I do, yeah.
3 kids, yeah, and it's having someone who's been through it. What's your favorite part? I want to jump into something. What's your favorite part about raising your kids?
I'm the youngest of 6, so that big family atmosphere is deep inside me, and I think we've always had this kind of open house thing where there's always more kids coming and more people sleeping over, and that's an incredible thing to me that I love teaching other kids stuff, or my kids learning from other parents, and the blending of all that stuff it's a really lovely way to raise kids, and to have that humility to know that you don't know everything. In fact, we were pretty clueless with our first, and she taught us how to parent, and we went on from that. But I do remember distinctly, my wife took my son to the Y in Lower Manhattan, and this swimming teacher just took him and took him into the water and dunked him a couple times, smiling. And that was kind of this thing. My son always came up smiling, and that's when we realized this kid's going to be a water baby. And he's now a fisherman off of Maine, and he's deeply into the water.
That's amazing. I love that. No, that's really cool to talk about, community and having others around where you don't have it all figured out. And we were talking about before how we were in Yosemite last week, and with our gaggle of 15 or 10, 12 kids, whatever it was, and how it's funny too. I found your own kids can kind of be a little triggery at points where the scream, or just you're just okay, how do I stay calm and not freak out? But if it's somebody else's kid, I'm oh, it's great. Oh, get in the wagon, it's fine, we'll figure it out. And the kid's oh, okay. And it's so beautiful when you can have that community and have those around that can also love your kids and take care of it. So.
Well, I do think, just to bring it back to photography, I do think there are parallels between how we parent and how we photograph, at least for me. And I am, the same way they're helicopter parents, I see a lot of photographers who overly sort of helicopter their subjects, and I'm very laid off on both ends. I have a strong wife who's been very supportive raising the kids, but I've noticed that that when I photograph, I have to approach my subjects in this way where I let them kind of lead the energy and I flow with that, rather than coming in and saying, okay, this is the way we're going to do the pictures. That's, it's just part of my ethos, which is feeling should come from the subject rather than from me.
Where did that come from? Like, was that something that was always the way you like approach photography, or is that like from your childhood growing up, or did you ever have a different approach and did it change?
No, I think that it evolved from this place that I was certainly an introvert and a shy kid. And so I came to photography in a very observational way, very detached, observing people. Getting into weddings made me come out of my shell, but still my natural place is I'd be a quieter one in the conversation, rather than, some people will lead a discussion. I think I come in a little bit quieter, and so that's just my natural approach to photographing people. And I encourage people when I teach to find which way is your strong suit. My strong suit is entering empty and just evolving. Some people are naturally directorial, and I think that's fantastic. I just don't have that skill. So, which way you want to, what's your strong muscle is basically the question.
Yeah. No, I love that. I like how you worded that, where it's not necessarily like there's a right or a wrong, but it's understanding like who you are as a person, your creativity and the way that you like see the world. And then from there, like, and I like how you related it to parenting of just like, you're the same, like we talked off camera too before this about like how you're the same person on a wedding day at the pool with your kids. Like it's not help. I feel like in the West, we tend to try to compartmentalize like who we are and like, oh, like this is the work version of me and this is this. And that's can be really exhausting. Like you're holding your breath because you're not staying true to yourself, versus when you could focus on like, who am I? And like, how do I show up in the world? It's something where it's really beautiful, where now you can be like passionate about your work because it like aligns with who you are, right? Like, is that kind of like...
Well, one of the coolest things I heard was a podcast about comedy, and a comedian was talking about the best comedians, the best joke tellers are super relaxed, as opposed to that person who really wants to tell a joke at a party and it just falls flat. And I thought that's a fantastic metaphor for my best pictures are made when I'm barely working, when the clients don't know that I'm working, where it seems like I'm, very loosey-goosey. That just means that I'm feeling it. I'm in the vibe. I get the vibe of what the subjects are going through, and I'm playing off that. And I think because I've been a photographer for most of my life, certainly my adult life, I started when I was 16, it's the technical parts are all so deeply inside me that it's basically the picture makes itself if I'm in the right state of mind. And I think that's a place that I don't think people work on that much. They work on how to grow their business or how to increase profits or how to prompt their subjects to do something. But, if you really work on how you listen to people and how you talk to people and how you feel their vibe and like, what are they feeling? That's sort of the main skill of a great photographer I've found.
Yeah. Or like what you're saying is like, if you like the technical is like, yes, you need to be able to like expose your images and all that. But if that's just on autopilot, like if you're an NFL quarterback, you're not like, okay, what's my throwing motion? How do I like, no, all that like in the plays, like that is dialed. You're just thinking about what's in the now, what's in this moment, and you're observing and like be able to respond. You're not just reacting, you're responding to what things are happening, right? Like you're reading the, so I had to bring a football analogy because we both love Friday Night Lights, but
we could go down all the sports.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a great thing. When a soccer player is kicking a penalty kick, when a golfer is swinging, when a skier is skiing, there's no thinking involved. I mean, Michael Jordan's kind of the greatest example of that flow state. But I really think that it's an incredible thing to think about and work on and reflect on. It's like, when were you last in the flow state, and what was the result? And it's super fun. That's the best part. It's when I get a great photograph on film from where I was just fully flowing. That's the greatest feeling I've had in a long time.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you touched on too, I think there's a difference between some of like, maybe like, okay, I'm going to be like fly on the wall, like not like involved at all. But if it's too much of focusing on internally of like, oh, my craft, what I'm doing, you're going to miss what's going on in the room, versus what you're saying is like, no, that needs to be on autopilot, where I'm just like, obviously I'm capturing, but I'm like, the photo is like, I'm trying to like observe what's going on. And then I'm just like, kind of like subconsciously taking the photo almost like to some degree. Like you're focusing on what's there in front of you and like reading the room, the dynamics, and knowing like the mom with it, and this is a special, and you're just like, you're seeing it all play out. And then the photo is just, okay, you're taking it, but you're not like, how do I line up the shot and then make sure this person walks? It's just like a different pivot. But I think it's interesting how, when whether you're a more of that, like, let it happen, more like a little bit more reserved personality, or somebody who maybe is a bigger, like, I tend to be a little bit more like, I like to talk a lot, as you like, as you know, like I'm a little bit where I'm like, I'm going to talk and like feel the room, but that's the way I can like, not like that's how I operate, but it's like, how do I do that to understand what's going on and then let the like moments play out, to not have an agenda. But it is interesting. I think sometimes on both sides, either it's the people that are overly like, they talk a lot, but they are trying to like push an agenda, right? Could do the same thing if you're watching, take the photo, you're trying to like wait for the moment to line up and you're focusing on the skill instead of the moment.
Yeah. I think it would be hard for you to be a fly on the wall. You're a big fly.
I'm a very big fly.
But I mean, it's, you know, it's like we learn all these things. I was at a wedding 2 weeks ago in Chicago, and the family just took me in so immediately. And it would have been really awkward if I was a fly on the wall, because it was such an intimate wedding, and I was led into these intimate situations, and they looked to me as if I was a family member. And so when I get an invitation to be part of a group, I have to grab that. And I mean, I was so close to my subject the whole weekend, to all the subjects. So all the pictures are, 3 feet away, 6 feet away. There was no distance, but that was specific to that situation. I have a wedding this weekend that may be a little bit less. Who knows? I never know. But you have to be able to pivot each way.
Yeah, I love that, where you're staying open to like what the client needs, and like serving and showing up like what's gonna serve them the best way. Not get too caught up in like, well, this is the way that I do it. Versus like, it sounds like you like. Actually, that'd be a good kind of segue. Like right now, like what, like for you, like why you love doing, like what's your driving passion behind what you do? Like when you're doing that and you're like, oh, this is my flow state. Like what is that like core?
It really is that. It's almost like I think about it when I leave my car at the airport, the parking lot, and get on the plane, and then 3 days later I come back to the car. I'm like, there's a distance between. I just went on some sort of trip, and I went on this trip into these people's houses that I would never in a million years go into, and I learned all about this family in a way I'd never do. It's really fast and intimate, and it's. I just constantly learn about family dynamics and human nature and the complexity of life. And it's just, to me, it's like short stories with a camera, because every family is incredibly complicated and tender and messy and beautiful. And so it's really kind of these weekly lessons in family poignancy. And so it's, and I mean, I sort of have these phrases that pop into my head, and there was one about this, that when I am brought to a wedding, it's this invitation to make something great. So, if I was just a street photographer, you could be going out and taking pictures all over the place. This is a very specific thing, saying, here, we're going to pay you this, a nice chunk of money to come make art. that's an incredible luxury that we have, that we get paid a paid commission to make something great. So I take it really seriously. Like, I'm going to make something that blows these people away on a really significant day. So it's, I'm really taking it to this level, a serious level of responsibility for me to not play it safe, not make the same pictures I made last week. And let's make some art.
Yeah, I love how you said like not play it safe, and you kind of touched on like that, like the value you're bringing to your clients. And I think especially like as you're saying, like obviously like in the luxury industry, as you like progress and you do it for a long time or just are well established, like obviously like it's usually like good chunk of money, and like people are investing a substantial amount where there is an expectation of like, okay, that money directly relates to like trust and like something that they're like, no, I see the value in you. And I think for you having a more of a unique style that's very like I just love it. It's just like one of a kind, right? Like you've been able to really leverage your own like perspective, and I think a lot of people can get stuck seeing like what like the normal, what a luxury. So like for you, how have you seen like be able to stay true to your craft, but also like I guess to your clients, like understanding how that's like what they want. Like I think there's like one of those favorite sales quotes I have is like, sales isn't convincing somebody to like buy what you have. It's helping people see like if it's what they want. It's just showing them it is what they want. So for you, like how you've understand like, okay, your work isn't going to be for everybody, and that's okay.
Right.
But like how you've been able to like find out, I don't need to conform, like how you like tailored your offering and what you do for what they, I guess like listening to your clients.
Well, the fun thing is that it hasn't changed for 30 years. So when I started,
I love that.
The clients I got were the people who didn't want a wedding photographer. And the people I get now are people who don't want a wedding photographer. They want a photographer to photograph their wedding. So that means I haven't chased trends because I photograph the way I photograph, whether it's my family reunion or my friend's birthday party or wedding. It's the same. I'm the same photographer. But I think the difference between 30 years ago and now is that I realized that I'm part of the wedding. I'm a performer. And this is the level of, I'm just so fond of my clients that I kind of try to take care of them all weekend emotionally. I know when to give them a break, when to leave them alone. And I think I walk away from weddings with this connection with families that's really a value-added thing that comes from my experience. But I meet a lot of young photographers who have great empathy and great insight and great subtlety, and I think it's a really powerful skill these days. I certainly meet a lot of young women photographers who come in really subtly, and it's their superpower. And I just think the days of being I think there's an opening for all kinds of photographers these days, and there's a wide range of clients too. So it's how do you find your people? And my people are the ones who don't want a bossy photographer.
Yeah. No, I love how you said that, because I think like I'm very big on like abundance and not scarcity, where I think so many people focus on the scarcity, and that kind of like it's a natural progression where it's real, like that's the natural default for people. Like we just always, I think, can tend to focus on lack. And when you do that, it's a really scary negative cycle you get into, because like you said, if you're like, everyone is like, well, people that want a photographer and it needs to appease the planners in the right way, and like you just start creating this box that's like this one little pie that everyone's trying to like box out in basketball to get their share of it, and they feel like, well, if I don't get it, somebody else is going to get it. Now I don't get it. Versus what you're saying is, I'm playing a totally different game. Like everyone else is playing like this thing, we're all fighting over this thing, and I'm like, I could just do whatever, like not whatever I want, but like basically like I'm playing a totally different game that's like focused on people that like are like, finally it's a breath of fresh air. And it's like there's like this unlimited, because you're focused on creating value in something, I think that's just like
it's a cool way of separating from the herd, which is something I've never understood, why photographers love to bunch into this herd mentality. And anytime, certainly when I started, the norm in New York were these very serious studio guys with tripods and big cameras and big lights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was small camera and nimble and came out of the magazine world. So I was completely different. They were all one color and I was completely different color.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it really easy for people to spot me because everyone else is wearing black tie and I'm wearing a white linen suit, metaphorically speaking. So I think it's, if you can stand out, and also I've certainly for the past 15 years, I've had this goal of 12 weddings a year, 10 to 12 weddings a year. So that's not a lot to ask. So if I'm standing out in my white linen suit saying 10 people, I'm over here, that's a lot easier to ask from the universe rather than saying, I'm in a black tux and everyone else is in black and I want to get that one wedding that everybody else wants. It's kind of, I don't want what everybody else wants. I want these really thoughtful, literary, visually sophisticated, super kind people who are getting married someplace cool and love each other. Like those are my people. And they tend to find me, and planners tend to call me and say, I've got one for you. And that's a place that, because I've defined myself really clearly, then it's easy for, if planners are like casting directors and I'm this character actor who does one role, like, oh, we need that role for this job. So, that's it.
Yeah, there's I love the way you put it. Almost like a typecast, but you are like it for that thing. And I think so many people are like, okay, how am I going to like satisfy, or this is what's popular, so we're going to go into this thing, but it's exhausting because you're not being authentic to who you are. And to take a step further, it's like your way isn't necessarily the right way for everybody. And that's what you touched on earlier. It's like, okay, it's not like, oh, everyone should wear white linen suits. You're like, well, no, like, do you want to be Dumb and Dumber with the orange, find your thing. I mean, but it's cool where it's like you get to play this game where there's no competition because the people are just so thankful that you see them and like are able to bring value to what they value, right? And it's like, I love seeing value as like it's the distance, or it's like the transformation of like almost teleporting someone from point A to point B of where they want to be. And like your service is a vehicle that takes them there. So it's like all these other photographers like, who wants to go to Alcatraz? You're like, no, I want to go down to like Santa Cruz to go to the beach. You're like, and everyone else is trying to like do this tourist trap. I'm like, no, and it doesn't matter how good your offer, your discount is. And at some point, if that's the only option, maybe someone takes it. But it's like this breath of fresh air when you can show up and like kind of hear people. What are ways that you've like been able to like find that balance of focusing on like what you're doing, but also listening maybe to like what clients are wanting, that's maybe like trying to understand what they like, staying true to what you like who you are and your style, but also like listening to clients like from a service perspective, where I think sometimes we can get caught up in just trying to be like thinking and telling clients what they want instead of maybe listening and like being able to like take that and turn it and tailor our offers to really serve them how they want to be served and what they like truly need.
That's interesting because I don't know if I ask my clients what they want because I don't think they know. I think because I mean my working model is that the minute you get engaged, you have 600 questions people are going to ask you. Do you like this napkin or this fork or this or this or this? And I think people come to me, and if they respond, I'd love to meet people in person. I try as much as possible. And when I sit with people who are engaged, I can tell that they're just on decision overload. And if they respond to my work, I say, I'm the easiest thing on your list. I don't need anything from you. I don't need a shot list. I don't need information. Tell me what time you're putting on your dress and I'll be there an hour and a half beforehand. Or you're doing a Thursday night party, I'm there. Friday night, you're going to City Hall beforehand, I'm there. And I think that I would never take business advice from me because I'm sure I could have monetized and done systems, and like we are extreme. We're like Amish level of technology in our studio, and it's my contracts. So like one line, I will shoot your wedding. It's really ridiculous, but it's part of my ethos, which is based on trust and reputation, and even sometimes NDAs aren't even. There are certain clients I haven't done NDAs with because they're so powerful. Like you could destroy me with one tweet, so why would I betray trust?
I love that.
I just think it's I've always thought about weddings as completely different business model from corporate America, or it's based on emotions, and even pricing is so bizarre. It's like, who makes up these numbers? But it's it's really that core thing that you are letting me into the most intimate day of your life. I'm going to treat you well. And I'm not going to nickel and dime you. I'm not going to, it's like, I want it to be this business love fest, but more love fest than business.
No, that's a great answer. That was a way better answer than I was even bargaining for, because you touched on something that I thought was really good, is the way you actually, though, because I think sometimes people, when like listening to clients of what they need, people can think, okay, I need to ask them. Where what you did, though, is a step further, because you are giving them what they need. You're listening to them by like their body language and knowing what they're going through. And by knowing like, hey, you have decision overload. Like, I'm not going to be another thing on your list. Like, let's take this off your plate. And like, I'm sure you can even just see their posture, probably just like, wow, that's just like a light off my load. And so many people get caught up on all the inputs of like, I need to like, here's all the things you get, here's all the things, and X, Y, Z, and thinking that's bringing more value. And really, value is what it's like does for them, right? Not what you think they need or what you think they want. And I think what you did, that's a really cool way to how there's actually way more value in doing less and not requiring
I don't even understand the input forms. I understand why people have them on their website, but I'm just thinking, if I'm getting married and every photographer I want to talk to has a form I have to fill out, from my point of view, as somebody imagining I'm getting married, that would drive me insane. I basically just say, call me. But I understand that some people get 100 inquiries a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I get very few, but still, certainly back in the day, I just, a 10-minute phone call, not even a video call, just like I go for a walk. And I just think it's an option for people. If you can, I don't know. I think there's a lot of options for rethinking the business model, especially because in my experience, word of mouth is has always been the core of my marketing, where I just let people know that I'm interested in cool, fun people who are getting married, your friends, sisters getting married. Oh, have her call me. Or, as I was growing my business, I was constantly just open to the idea of fun people, interesting people in New York. I did a lot of weddings for magazine people, editors, writers, photo editors. And that was my group of fascinating people to kind of go fishing in that pond. Advertising people were fantastic. Like that was because I'd shoot their weddings and then I would get jobs from that. So I just think, people spend a lot of time sitting on their computer thinking of what to do, but where are the cool people in your town hanging out? Where are the cool 28 to 35-year-olds? You go hang out at that swimming hole. And
I think, and you touched on, sometimes we tend to overcomplicate so many things, or like someone may be like, well, I want to get like whatever, but like the contracts and this and that, and like, okay, hearing someone like you, it's like, oh, that's a couple words, and like at the end of the day, like what's the big, like I like your point too, just like half joking, half serious, like the NDA stuff, like if you're at this level, like it doesn't even matter, like you could ruin me. And I think there's that trust too, though, when you just connect, like like for us too, like I remember like even just a couple of years into it, like it was popular where a lot of people would send like a pre-questionnaire form to like your couples of what they want. And I was just like, we had it for ours and dude, yeah, it's homework. And I remember we didn't get it done till like 2 days before the wedding. And I felt so bad. And I was like, okay, for us, I'm like, okay, if someone wants to connect before though, because I get sometimes there could be stress. I'm like, I'm here for you guys. If you want to hop on a call, call us anytime. If you want to have a pre-wedding call like a month out or something before things get crazy, just to like know that we're good, re-meet us. So it's not like meeting totally there. But also if that sounds like homework, you don't need to do it. And I think it's just like giving them options where it's like, hey, if they need it, here it is, but you don't need to do it. You know, like it's not a requirement. Like I'm working for you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And just,
I think
permission to do it differently.
It's almost like everybody in the wedding industry got a consultant who said, this is how to grow your business. These are the forms you need to integrate. This is the way that a professional photographer works. I'm like, that's not of any interest to me. I'm not professional. I'm like the private chef, or I'm like the, I don't know what the other,
I think the private chef is actually kind of a good one where you have the formal restaurant, you get the reservation, you're like, hey, you want really good food, I'll show up to your house, Venmo me, whatever, like we'll have a great time and I'll bring some wine. And it's just a different, and some people want to go to the Michelin star restaurant and dress up and you're like, that's great. But if you're like, I want to show up in my jean jacket and make you dinner outside and like Big Sur, that's like a different. Exactly. I think it's just okay to like stay true to who you are, because some people are going to be more formal and want that, and I think that's okay. But depending on how you operate, it's just staying true to that and not trying to put up a facade, because that's just going to be exhausting after a while. Like you just can't. And people also can know when you're authentic or not. I think that's like
I'm sure some people are listening to this going, this guy's insane. Like there's a terrible way to run a business. No contracts, no NDAs, no nothing. But I basically like to talk about this because it's possible. And it's been a really beautifully rewarding experience having this relationship with my clients. I've started past, 10 or 15 years meeting people whenever before the wedding, 6 months, 3 months, and having a drink and doing some engagement pictures, just some portraits of that time. And the last time I did it, I said to them, like, I want to put these pictures in a box and send them to you in 10 years. So you remember when you have 3 kids who are driving you crazy, like what it was like. I send people pictures, but the pictures are less important than having a glass of wine and just letting them talk about the stresses of the wedding. So that on that Friday night when I arrive, we've already broken bread together. So it's, I think it's important to see people, to share wine or bread or something, and share some sort of personal thing, not only on Zoom, but actually just like the way you and I hung out at the pool. I think that's a really important linkage, and maybe it's not possible, but maybe it's more possible than people think. And, so I'd throw it out there.
Yeah. I love what you said too. Like some people may be, even with this podcast, like when I was starting, like, okay, well, I don't know, at some point, screw it. Like some people probably won't either hate the way my voice sounds, or going to think I'm crazy and be like, that's stupid. And like, that's fine. But if it resonates with you, it's something that's different. I'm like, that's great. Like it doesn't need to be for everybody. Right. And like you said, if you're doing weddings, like 10 people a year, and I think like a follower count, it doesn't matter if you have like 500 followers or 500,000, like you still only need like 10 people a year. And I'm like, even for us, I'm like, half the time they're not even following us anyways. So it's like, well, it's just like you don't need to do it the way everybody else is doing it. And I think, like you said, just giving that permission is huge, where I think so many people get caught up in, like you said, like that, like whatever general way that everybody is doing business. And it is interesting that I do think it kind of stems from like, almost like you're saying when you got started, of like the more of like the studio photographers, like professional, and how there's almost like a lot of identity crisis, I think, with some photographers, like when we do it, where it's like an imposter syndrome. So you need to look as professional as possible and like have your crap together, when really that's like hurting you more, when being more casual and be like, yeah, shoot me a text, like breaking down those walls is actually what's probably going to make you more desirable than like, I don't, you know what I mean? I just think it's so interesting how sometimes we try to like formalize things when really it should be the opposite.
Well, especially if you think about this realization I had that most of the photographers who are listening to this will have been in a circumstance where within the first 3 hours of hanging out with our clients, we've seen them, getting dressed or crying or having some sort of nervous breakdown. Like that's a normal first hour of our relationship with our clients. Yeah. That's not a normal professional situation. You don't work at IBM and on the first day of work, you see your boss crying in the corner, but it's
in their underwear.
Yeah. So I'm saying we're in a weird job. So if you lean into that, recognize that it's awkward to be photographed. It's awkward to be photographed when you're crying. It's awkward to be photographed when your grandmother is just gotten out of the hospital. All these things. The few times I've watched photographers work, sometimes they're so focused on getting the shot that they're oblivious to the fact that this person is really uncomfortable or this person's exhausted from the family pictures. I've seen grooms just about to explode and the photographer didn't notice. It's like, give that guy a break.
Oh, so I've had it sometimes where we're shooting video and the photographer's just oblivious, like getting shots. I can see the groom, like he's about to cuss out the photographer. And I'm just like, and now I'm like diffusing a bomb where I come up and I have to like come up and like, what do you want to drink? What shot do you want? And it's like, I'm just like appeasing, like, tell me what you want. I'll bring it to you right now. And then I'm like, hey, you're doing great. And it's just like, but I'm like, this shouldn't be this way. But I'm like over here making sure that he doesn't go ballistic. And then after he's just like, thank you. That was like, and it's like, okay, like it's just seeing, and I get it's hard. Like for me, I have the benefit if I'm doing video, for instance, like I'm a little bit more like the photographer is dealing with all the family photos, and it is more stressful because I do that too. And I get doing family photos, you're just trying to think a lot more, but it's still like the ability to just take a breath and just observe and see and read people. Like even doing like whatever you're meeting up and doing engagement photos or whatever, like if they're like wanting to drink, like whether you get 20 images or 5 or like at the end of the day, like the photos, like the value is really like, sure, maybe they'll put a couple on their website or something. But like to me, especially as a parent now with kids, like, getting a box of a couple photos, like it's just bringing me back to that memory and that feeling less than did I get the shot down Brooklyn with the, like whatever the bridge, like, like there's like, I mean, like who cares? Like that's not, you could Photoshop anybody into that. But if it's something that's real, that brings me back to it, that's the, and I just think it's something that's so refreshing because I think so much people get caught up, especially with this Instagram world of just trying to like get the same thing versus if you can bring that humanity back to it.
Yeah. I mean, you reminded me of one of my early meetings. I'd say the first 20 weddings I did were mostly friends. And that's how I figured out why I was doing it, because it was just so rewarding. And so I loved the pictures. Then I started getting referrals, and I remember meeting these people, going to their apartment in Manhattan, showing them some pictures, and it was just an instant connection. The bride was an actress, off-Broadway, starting out actress. And it was just a really immediate, positive meeting. And I walked out, I'm going to the elevator, and I got back to my apartment, and back in the phone machine days, there was a message from them saying, we want you, you're hired. And during the meeting, they had said to me, the magic words was, we want one great picture. And when somebody says that to me, that means I'm going to work my ass off to get you one work of art for your wall. And it was a very early lesson that I didn't need to cover everything. These guys didn't care about anything except one great work of art. So, that was a foundational wedding to me that ended up as just incredible people and really wild, and just midnight group pictures of everybody in a big mosh pit. And they led the way. They were big personality people. But I got them what they wanted, and it wasn't a money wedding, it was a joy wedding. So it's I think the business of weddings often overpowers, like a tsunami, the art of weddings. So I've always been pushing back against that, monetization and please the client, and client's always right, and we're a service industry. Like, well, that's why I think of myself more as a performer rather than a maitre d' or a waiter or something. It's like,
Yeah.
I have to bring it.
Yeah. I love the idea of like the performer too, of like, it's just, what book was I reading? I think it was 10X is easier. There's some book, but it was talking about like comparing like athlete performances, and it was like also like for business owners and stuff, but just the power of rest and getting like only 17% of your ideas come from when you're working, the rest is when you're resting, and you need to have those rest days to be able to perform and like show up and like you are like you're, whether it's like a pianist or like like a comedian, almost like it's this mix of like, it honestly is kind of like a weird job because I feel like it is a mix of like a comedian and like a musician and athlete, because it's like you're active on your feet a lot, you're talking a lot and making people feel comfortable, and then you also have a technical skill you're doing all at once.
Yes. I've always seen us as the part court jester and part UN peacekeeper, and, but there is the athlete part as well. But I think that that rest part it's hard for us because we all are self-employed and, we're in our own business. But it's, whenever I go to any wedding event, like Kinetic, the people in that room were so open-hearted and so emotional, like the emotional intelligence is off the chart of wedding people because we're used to being in really complicated situations and having to deal. So I think it's an incredible training ground for just problem solving and body language reading. And I think we are, there's a great skill set, but then it gets kind of warped by these people who are they forget the art and they spend more time worried about the business than the art.
Yeah, I totally hear that. How would you say you're like incorporating rest into your like life right now? Or what's like the most restful thing that you found?
I mean, I wish I could show you my napping porch, which is just around the corner here, which is something my wife gave me, and it's just the greatest thing in the world. Even 10 minutes out there is heaven. And we've gotten more. I mean, my wife's a big gardener. She's gone away for the week, and she's left me with a list of things to.
I know you have like a whole working farm.
We do not. We produce nothing, but we take care of a couple of animals. But and there is something to that I mean I never grew up with dogs or anything, but there's a rhythm to that I've recently learned the power of. But I don't rest enough. I don't, but I completely agree with you that when I do, it's just all the realizations come out because, we see so much, we're learning so much from our job that you have to have some time to distill it and synthesize it and put it into words. And I've got an old typewriter. I'm going to try to type more things. We'll
write them just for fun. The typewriters have one copy.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Well, like, yeah, with like rest, like you said, you're not resting enough. Like how much, because I think some people view like on like priority lists, it's like, okay, I just need to keep on grinding and eventually like I can rest. But then also you get to the top where you feel like you just can never rest. Like, do you like, I guess like, what is like I don't know where I'm going with it. Like, do you find like a couple days a week or like what's your, like how much are you actually working versus resting? Because I think performing, like obviously like you're traveling, that's like you're on like 110%. Yeah. But when you are off, like do you usually take a couple days throughout the week or?
I think I do more the rhythm of work for a couple hours and then go out and do stuff and back and forth. I mean, the hard data is that I've been on the road for 30 years. I don't know how many jobs a year, but I haven't slept in my own bed for 2 weeks in a row, except for the pandemic, for in 30 years. I'm within 2 weeks, I'm somewhere else, either in the city or on a job. But I'm slowing down a little bit and just doing more quality rather than quantity. But I still do some nonprofit stuff. I shot a kids orchestra last week that was fantastic. I do some corporate stuff. I do some design companies and lifestyle stuff. So it's a mixture, and then the 10 weddings or commissions throughout the year. So it's a balance, and I think that really helps me, the mixed diet. So it's not just weddings.
Like you creatively can fill up and not be like just burned out doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and I have certain families I've documented for years, and that's really fun. So, but it's all more or less all people, and photographing people as they are, not as I want them to be.
Yeah. And I want to touch, because I like how you said, like, it's less like when you focus so much on the business and not on the work. But I think it's funny because, like, indirectly though, I think by you focusing on what you're doing, you're just focusing on the right part of the business. Like as a creative, you're servicing, like if you're a car mechanic, I want my mechanic spending more time working on the car and making sure it's running well than just like all the business admin. And I think the one thing I think that's interesting for you is like the business side needs to run to let you have flexibility to be creative, right?
Yep.
But I think this interesting thing I'm hearing from you is like to also give yourself permission to not have to do it like everybody else, of like simplifying your contracts. Like it sounds like you've like added a lot of things to keep it more casual, so that way the business burden isn't as much of a burden and you're able to just flow more. Like, am I reading that right? Or like where I think sometimes people...
Yeah, and I think it's that way to attract the right people who are in alignment with your values. And if my values are relationships based on trust and improvisation, and I did portraits of this family. The Ballerina Farm is she's a Instagram, I guess they'd call it influencer, but a really interesting family out in Utah. And I've photographed them twice, and it's just, they trust me. I come without an agenda and document. And, I just think that it's possible to redesign your life or to design your life in this way that fits for you. On the other hand, I've definitely heard from people saying, easy for you because you're established, easy for you because you've done these weddings, you've got all this. I recognize the fact that a lot of what I'm saying is kind of la la land, but you never know. Maybe people will do it for themselves or incorporate some portion of this. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah. Well, what would you say? I mean, if we took back like a little bit, like when you first started, like you didn't start off shooting like president's daughters' weddings. Like that wasn't like your first wedding. Like, So I mean, like, how would you? But you said earlier that you had the same approach throughout the whole process. So, like, are there times that you could point to maybe like there was like a struggle where you're like, okay, like trying to like practically, I guess, like especially when you're a full-time artist, like you're needing to make ends meet, whether it's like paying rent or mortgage. Like, do you have like times where you like felt that like conflict maybe like earlier in your career where you're trying to find like how to?
I'd say most of it until the last, I don't know, 5-10 years was a not weekly slog, but it was a monthly challenge to have 3 kids and saving for college, and the rates are so much higher than they were even 10 years ago that I had to work a lot harder for a lot less. So I'd say the first 20 years of my career were a hustle. I like hustling. I like being scrappy, but it was a stressful thing. So I'm certainly on the other side of it where it's weddings come to me easier. And I'm able to make more money per wedding. So I think, but I also think it's a good thing for people to remember that the last 5 years have been the golden era of weddings. There are more people in the world making a living at weddings than ever in the history of the world. So, if you all are worried that 2025 is a little slow, you guys have it so much easier than ever in history. And there's, so it's a crazy boom time, I'd say, since 20 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been a nutty run that was not sustainable. So if it's a little bit slower, this is more the new normal. This is the old normal.
Mm-hmm. Which is still crazier than it was 20 years ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, my average weddings were maybe 7,500, or I remember when I hit $10,000 for a wedding for the first time, and it was mind blowing.
You're like, people would pay this much money for a...
Who would? Because if you think about it logically, who would ever pay $10,000 for a wedding photograph or photographer?
Yeah,
it's nuts.
It's way more than the cost of film.
Yeah. But it trained me to diversify, and there's a lot more magazine work back then, which was 1/3 of my business, and I did some fashion catalogs, which carried me through with a regular gig. So if you don't like uncertainty, you're in the wrong business. If you don't like being nimble, and I mean, the only business advice I've ever gotten and kept is to keep your overhead low and prepare for downturns every 10 years. So,
yeah, like it's going to happen.
A lot of them.
Yeah. There's this book that I started reading called Necessary Endings, but it's talking about like the cycle, like everything's in seasons.
Yeah.
And when you hit the winter, if you don't acknowledge that there's seasons, you're like an idiot being like, why is my crops not growing? It's like, well, because it's winter, you dummy. Like but so often, like, we'll go through seasons in business and you're like, why? I'm doing something wrong. Like, what's not working? And it's just, you have to acknowledge, like, there's recessions and then there's booms, and it's just acknowledging that it flows. And if you don't acknowledge it, you could think you're doing something wrong, versus like you're saying, if you can acknowledge and prepare for those times, so that when the winter you have that and the sky isn't falling.
Right.
It can still be painful and it's still cold in the winter, but if you know it's coming and you're not going to be able to grow crops in the winter, how do you prepare for that? Was there like a shift, like a mindset shift or something at any point? Or like, I guess here, like, if you would say now, is there anything that you believe differently than when you like started like a couple of years ago, that like the way you like view, whether it's art or the business side, that was like a limiting belief?
I think I feel this, I feel like this preacher or this cheerleader for the work that's being created these days that I wish the art world was recognizing, because I think contemporary wedding photography is extraordinary. I think there's really some incredible people out there doing really dynamic work. And, if I have a mission, I want the art world to see weddings not as kind of, this cheesy genre over in the corner doing very sentimental work, but it's actually, we're documenting contemporary life just on really cool weekends. So I think I've just gained a lot of pride for my colleagues, and I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking, but it's something that it's what makes me go to these conferences and hang out with everybody and chat with, because it's just like, it's a dynamic, optimistic, entrepreneurial, it's just really a thriving industry where some of the art photographers I know are, they're applying for grants for $5,000 and they're just kind of struggling and they're not sure what their mission is. But most of the photographers I meet are really clear and passionate about their mission. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really a positive force. All I want to do is propel people into, making them take some of that art and giving themselves an art background, art backbone, so that they, are able to shoot for themselves. That's, my main philosophy is that the most important person to please at a wedding is myself, not the client. If I please myself, the client will be happy. If I'm disappointed because I played it safe and I just kind of phoned it in, the client, they're going to be disappointed. They may not know it, but on some level, they didn't get the best that they could have. And to go back to football for a second, it's, you could tell when somebody's exceeding their normal game, when they're on fire and they're hitting every pass they make.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's like not just play the normal game, but have a elevated game.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the football analogy is really good because I think that playing it safe, like you get up back up and like, okay, let's slow down. And it's like, well, that's usually when you can start falling back versus if you're quarterback and you're in the flow, I'm like hitting passes, let's just start running the ball. No, like just keep going because the momentum can swing real quick, and not from a scarcity point of view of like, oh my gosh, like at some point someone could pass me up like from a competition, because we're not in we're competing against ourselves though. And I think that's the difference. Is some people feel like, oh, I'm playing against the other photographers, when really the other team is just like the other version of you that like is like not thriving. Like the story of like the two wolves. Have you heard that one where it's like you have like two wolves inside? It's like I think it was like a Native American like a proverb or something. I forget what it was, but it was like it's kind of like the version. I forget exactly what it was. It's like there's like one with life that like wants to like grow and be abundant, ones that's like more focused on scarcity and like death basically. And it's like it's a battle between two wolves, and it was like the grandson was asking like which one wins, and he was like, oh, the one that you feed. So wow, if you're like focusing on, okay, let's just play it safe and not do it, like, yeah, you're focusing on like your version of yourself that's just gonna like be like, yep, there is an opportunity. Like everything's out there. There's opportunity and there's lack, but what are you gonna focus on? And it's just like when you buy a new car and you're like, oh, now I see these white Teslas everywhere because I got a white Tesla. You're like, okay, well, there wasn't necessarily overnight. It's just you're seeing it. So when you're on offense and you're seeing all the opportunities and like the guy's open, you're gonna just like be going. And I think to tie it back to weddings, the idea, which I think is interesting, where it is focused on serving the end client, but what you're saying is like people are hiring you for you and you not playing it safe. Like they're playing for you to get that art. So if that's what they're hiring you for, they need you to like create art that you're proud of, which means like, you know what I mean? I think some people are like, oh, well, is that like not serving the client? You're like, no, it's because that's what they're hiring me for. So whatever they're hiring you for, if you're really clear in your why of why you do what you do and they resonate with that, then you need to just be full on that and stay in that flow. And you're not trying to second guess what somebody else would want because they're hiring you for your vision.
Yeah, that's this image in my head of that early client. That's the one picture on the wall. If I'm visualizing that all day long, it's like I'm working towards that one piece of art. So I'm working towards my own little Mona Lisa moment or something like that. That's the positive mindset you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think just somebody like, and that ties into the mindset, because I think so often people, if they're stuck or wanting to grow and they're going to look to someone like you or someone who's like established, like they want the tactical, like, okay, yeah, but like I want, where do I go?
Right.
But everything starts in the mind though. Like you don't like, and also it's like those steps may not work for you. Like
also there's no 10 recipe to how to shoot a luxury wedding. That's the joke. I'm sure there's lots of PDFs you can buy or courses you can take, but I always have thought that the money follows the art and not the other way around. I love that. You can't get the big weddings unless you deserve that. Unless you have this portfolio that is so extraordinary, you can't manufacture that with a styled shoot. You have to go to weddings and make discovery pictures that you've never made before and go, oh my Lord, this is something new, and then make 10 more like that, and then you have a portfolio. But it takes hard work.
Yeah, and I think the idea of refinement I want to talk a little bit about, because I think so much people can get caught up in like, I need to get all these 1,500 photos or to capture every single angle. And especially at luxury wedding, like the 10 steps, it doesn't work because there's so much. It's just like our brains, like there's so much information that you can't process everything, right? And the key is, what are you focusing on? And that comes back to the car thing. I forget there's a word for it. There's like a phrase for the idea of like how your brain filters out information. That's why if you're focused on opportunities, you're going to see all the opportunities around. If you're focused on like all the reasons why you can't do something, whenever you argue for your limitations, I forget who said this quote, but whenever you argue for your limitations, you always win. I just thought it was such a good, because it's just, yeah, like that's what you're going to have. So on a wedding day, I think it's a prime example of there is like a limitless amount of photos of what you could focus on and what you could capture.
Right.
But you're saying it's more of what you don't capture and what you choose to capture. That's really the key. That's like your own voice and how you bring that. So like, I guess, is there like a way to like give people permission like on the mindset side? Because I think like, and even if you want to get specifics of like, like some clients you deliver like just a crazy amount fewer images than most people think is standard. So like one that's just like permission to do it differently. Is that okay? Is that true? I want to get that. So 15 is what you deliver?
Yeah.
I love that. Like when I heard that, I was like, that's amazing. I love it. But I also need to ask John. I didn't get a chance to ask you in Santa Barbara. If I was just hearing that, I was like, oh, is that the sneak peeks? But no.
Here are the facts. The first thing they see is a box in person. Come back to my apartment 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks after your wedding. We talk about your wedding, how crazy it was. And then I have this box of 15 prints sitting on a table. And then slowly we turn to the box and open it. And in that box it's basically my distillation of the 2 or 3 day event into 15 beautiful prints. And then, people hopefully are moved by that box. And then I say, all right, let's go into my office, and I show them a slideshow of 100 pictures, which is more the full flow of the weekend. And then, only then do I give them this proof book with it's kind of contact sheets of all 700 pictures. So they get more pictures, but my best clients, they're like, oh my God, there's more? Because this is plenty. This was everything. And the 700 pictures, whatever, it's like, I'm not going to hold these pictures back from people. But when I photograph a wedding, I'm photographing for that box. I'm photographing all weekend to try to get what are the 7 peaks, the 12 peaks at a wedding? What are these crucial moments that in 30 years, they're going to open this box and feel the magic of that weekend. And I think, most people, if you look at your parents or grandparents' albums, they were 15 to 20 pictures. So this whole idea of maximizing, it's not like we're all short of pictures in our lives. We all have plenty of photographs. So I'm playing against that overpopulation of pictures by saying, I'm going to squeeze the essence of your wedding, like the perfume of that weekend, into this little bottle. So that's why, I love telling people I give them 15. They get everything, but all they remember is 15. And some people never do anything with the other pictures. They can do whatever they want with them. They can print them if they want. If they want to order through me, they can, or they can do it themselves. I don't care. Because I'm not making my money off that.
I love that. And it's the focus on serving the client. Like they want, you're able to give them like, what's the whole point of having your wedding photographed? And you want to have the feeling and like those feelings preserved. And you're finding a way that's like contrary to what like everyone thinks you need to do. And like more is more, but you could get all. I learned by before I started this method, I would give people the contact sheets circled back in the old day with a loop and say, tell me your favorite pictures and I'll print them up. And nobody would, because it's too much work. And then one person, a really powerful art person, she said, you're the artist, you decide. It's like, oh, okay. Nobody had ever said that to me. And it was such a simple, but it was a huge light bulb moment, because it gave me the authorship and the responsibility and the power and I was the director of that movie. So it's a super simple thing to do, because hopefully as photographers, the great pictures. I also don't outsource anything. I do my own culling, because I want to feel the pain of when I blew a picture, or I want to feel the joy when I got it. I don't want some person halfway around the world to make those decisions. And I think it's
it's a huge part of my process is, if I shoot film and digital, but I'll edit the digital Friday night after the barbecue or Saturday night before I go to bed. I'll just go through quickly just to see, did I get something? But I want to own that victory or failure because it builds different muscles.
Yeah. And you're able to learn from it and like see, like, especially if you do it like the Friday night and you're going to the wedding the next day, you can be like, okay, like now I'm in it. I can see what I missed and can kind of grow on it.
For me, it's really just like, I want one picture from Friday night. Like, okay, I got one. And then I stop. And it's like, okay, I can go to bed now. I know who these people are. I got a sense of them from this one picture.
I love that. That's I think the mindset shift, because I'm big on just like, there's so many limiting beliefs we can live, and like the cost of believing lies, right? Like the price you pay, right, for buying lies. Like it's I think it's so true. And where like how we make decisions is based off of our mindset and our identity and like the truths that we believe like govern what is even possible, right? And if we believe it's this, but like what you're saying, I think that's such a amazing like kind of like light bulb moment, like you said, of with the client, where even the clients are telling you like you're the artist, you decide, and how empowering that is just to have that like, okay, like no, I am the artist, and they're not just hiring me just to take photos, but also to like to choose what really is that. And with that, everyone's going to have their own style, but if they can really lean into that and take like ownership over that, I think it's a really beautiful thing where now you can be creatively more fulfilled because you're having an impact that aligns with like what you believe.
It freaks people out to do that though. Like when I teach retreats, I have people bring their 15 pictures and I have them bring a few different things, but they all talk about how revealing it is. Like they couldn't find their 15 killer pictures. Everything was kind of medium. And that's interesting because that means maybe you're playing it safe. Maybe everything is just kind of, short passes instead of going for a bomb. But sorry for too many football metaphors for people out there. But I think it is something that it's a positive loop even if you go back to your last 5 weddings and do this own exercise of finding 50, you're only allowed 15 pictures or 12, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you say, is this picture better than this one? Yes. It makes you commit, and it makes you realize that you have. Then when you look at the 15 pictures, you learn something from that those are the pictures that maybe you took a little more risk on, or you directed more or didn't direct more. You have to do a little analysis after the wedding and see what made you reap your, really fruitful pictures.
Yeah. No, I love that. And when you don't do it, it's so easy to hide behind like the sea of images. Or like whatever it is that you're doing. If you're not refining down, it can allure that there's enough value there just because there's like quantity.
Yeah.
But if you had to get down to just like a few essence things, like clothes, like you have a massive wardrobe of clothes and they could all not be great. But if you're like, hey, I only have like 5 pieces, you're going to be like, oh, I want to make sure they're like things I love. Yeah. But you could have a whole wardrobe of stuff you just don't. I mean, I'm not really a clothes guy. I wear like a hoodie all the time, but it's like, yeah, I love my hoodie, so I'm going to wear it all the time. I'd rather have that quality over quantity. And I just
the 15 thing came from this one client who said she had these 2 guys photograph a family event, and this was way back in the DVD days. And she said they sent her a DVD with 4,000 pictures on it, and she looked at me and she's like, I never looked at one of them because they didn't have the professional pride to edit them down to their favorites. And that's this thing of like, this is the chef coming in and just throwing all the ingredients on the table saying, here's dinner. Yeah. You make it. So
yeah, totally.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. The chef one like really makes it really true, but it is like if you're looking and you have a hard time trying to find 15, imagine what it's like for the client.
Right.
Cause but it's so overwhelming. And even for clients, like I know I look at photos of myself, like you get even more particular about how you look.
Yeah.
And I think that's also when you are able to like observe and really know who you're shooting, there's this magic where you can tell when someone looks like them or not, themselves or not. Like, it's a weird thing where you could, like, even with videos, we watching, like, oh yeah, no, we got to cut that. Cause like that, I know that's not how they want to look. Cause there's just something like when you get to know somebody, like, oh, that's like their real smile, or that's like them feeling uncomfortable, or like you get to know what the best like version of themselves, like, I don't want to say best from this, like trying to put up a facade, but just like what they truly like, if they look in the mirror, like, oh, that's me. Like, that's me. Right. Like and I think that's like a key.
And sometimes it's one frame. That's that's really when it's really working for me. And I'd say a lot of the pictures in my book, there are 192 pictures, I think. And I'd say, 170 of them are single frames that rose above the other ones. It's not like I was shooting with a motor drive and could have taken any of the frames. It's usually that one peak moment. Cartier-Bresson called it the decisive moment, but I think for me it's more the essence moment, where that was where where you can smell it and hear it and feel it. It's not static. That's a rare treat. And for me, sometimes it happens 20 times at a wedding or 18 times, and then we'll narrow it down to 15. But, it's really clear which pictures deserve to be in the box and which pictures are just kind of fine.
Yeah. So I actually kind of like the decisive moment?
Decisive.
I heard this definition of like decide is to like, I believe it was decide is to like cut off all other options. It's like to cut off everything else. So when you decide, you really have to cut out everything else and like let go of. So if you're like, no, this is a 15, like that decisive essence, like you have to have the essence of like, what is it that you want to bring out? But then you do have to decide to cut everything else off, which is scary. It is really scary, but it helps you also know, like, is this really what I want to do? Like, do I really want to cut my hair? Like there's no going, like kind of like that, like going back where you're like, all right, this is deciding and I'm moving on. Which is scary, but if you don't do that, like you can't move on because you can't take it all, like it's a very, it's a powerful, and I think as an artist, like hard to do, but, I love for you as an artist, like right now to come back to like, what are ways that you're pushing yourself creatively to like further your art, or just the way that you're approaching or challenging yourself? Like now looking to the future.
I mean, I have a little game I play, which is I sometimes will bring a different camera to a wedding that I haven't used for a while. So I use a lot of different old cameras and stuff. So I'll go into my drawer, my closet, and say, who wants to come to this wedding this weekend? And if it's something close by, like where I'm driving to, I'll bring the 8x10. I play with, everything's gotten all fuzzy and blurry and imperfect. And now, so I have some cameras that are super sharp just to mess with, just to do something different and just try to keep it fresh.
Yeah. I love that. Like giving something like a different tool where, I think, I love how you touched about cameras. I think sometimes photographers, like when you get obsessed with gear and like, oh, what is it to get? And then it's a tool that we use, but I think when you can use it as almost like something to like mix things up to get you back to like being creative. Cause I think when it's almost too autopilot, like, okay, I'm just like doing the same thing over and over again. Like I know how to do it versus having something different that you're like, okay, like I got to see it different. Like if I'm used to shooting on a 50 and I'm now at like this 28, I'm like, okay, like, all right, like how do it gives you a different way to see the world. I think it's so cool. The way it can shift your focus, no pun intended, but
it is funny when people will sometimes will DM me or something like, what camera did you use? And I just want to, I hold back, but I always want to write like, it's like asking a chef, like, what pan did you use? Or what knife did you use to cut that? Like, find your own. And I think the same thing with using a different camera would be that chef bringing in some new ingredients. I think it does keep it fresh. And I'm also trying to pare my kit down too, because I would often bring so many cameras and it's just kind of ridiculous. So I'm trying to see what I can do with less.
Yeah, I love limitations. I was talking to, I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with somebody on the podcast, and they're talking about like, the ability of like the power of limitations and like constraint. And we were just talking about, because we both had young kids, like I think she had like a 1-year-old or 2-year-old. So like we were both like, we don't have as much time. We can't work for like 10 hours straight. I'm like, I got like 4 hours until I go pick up Rachel from preschool. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do with that? And same thing with photography. It's like, if you play within your constraints, can be really good because it keeps you from all the, like, for instance, like on Gearwise, like when we went to Europe, like I took our little Q2 and it was like so much fun because I didn't even think about switching lenses because I'm like, well, it's what I got a 28. Right. And I'm like, and I loved it. I mean, one, it was really small, so it was great. But two, it's just like, okay, like for that situation, I'm not second guessing, like, should I swap? Like, I'm just like, nope, this is what it is. And it freed, like, there's freedom in constraint. And I think that's something that we so often don't like believe. And I think that's just the truth, like the freedom you get in constraint and how it can, that new constraint, and then using new cameras is just giving a different constraint. Then I was going to create art differently because you're constrained to this vantage point. So now you get to see what you can create within this constraint. But when everything's an option, then you have no option, right? Like it's a beautiful thing. So awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It was a joy. Great chat, all things just life and business. And I just love the way you were able to like tie together so much, just how it all plays together. And if people want to get in touch with you or connect with your work, what's the best way that they can do so?
I think Instagram's probably best. If I'm allowed to plug my book, I will say.
Oh, absolutely.
Books back here. I'll sign them, send you a special gift, and that's on my website. Just under, I think it's under the print shop.
Okay.
But I'm happy to send those books out myself. And
so cool.
Yeah, Instagram. I enjoy the direct access with people. You know, and I do. Usually once a year, I'll do a retreat of 10 people up in the Berkshires where I live, and we'll go at it and sort of a 3-day deep dive. No shooting, just talking and looking at pictures and stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you post about that? Will that be like, can people find out about that on Instagram if they want to?
It's kind of a word of mouth secret website thing, but if people want to email me about it, I'll put them on the secret list.
I love that even better. The not so secret list. I love it. Well, to plug the book though, John hooked us up with a copy, which was very kind of him when we were in Santa Barbara. I have a fun signed copy, which was really special. And it is a beautiful, like just the best, like we have it out in our living room. It's just such a beautiful, and it's funny because like I would never have like a book of wedding photos, even as a wedding photographer, like, but they're just like one of the photos, I believe it's on the bride on the floor, but it just reminds me of like a Renaissance painting. And I just love like the depth. It is just like, there's so much going on, and it makes me feel like I'm like sitting in the Louvre looking at one of those like big paintings where there's just so much going on and your just eye kind of falls around. So it's a really beautiful book. And also I just love, like, it's a great feel. You did a great job with the print too. I'm really big on like the feel and stuff, but definitely if you're interested and you want some inspiration, having something different, especially if you want like a different style, definitely check out his book. We'll make sure to put all the links too in the show notes or description wherever you're listening to this.
I had a friend, a woman who bought the book, and she wrote to me saying that her son went through the book and he made up stories about different pictures. Like he just looked at, and I was like, "That's the greatest book review I've ever heard." Because that spoke to me that my pictures, I hope my pictures are not telling you what to think, but they're leaving it open for interpretation. But I should put that on my Amazon page.
You should. That is a really cool, I want to hear the stories. That's so cool. That's like true art where you think of like, yeah, just like whether it's like all these like famous pieces where it's just like everyone has their own interpretation, or music. Exactly. So it's like, yeah, you have what the artist wrote, but often it's like they almost want to leave it open to interpretation to hear what like you as a like art is what the person like does with it, right? And I think that's what value is too. It's like value isn't the input, it's what it does for the other person, right? It's like that external impact that's whether it's for you as artist or whoever's like viewing it. And I think so often we get caught up on how long it took or like all the work that, and it's like, who cares how much stuff you in or how long you cooked? It was like, yes, the slow cooked chicken was for 4 hours, but if it don't taste good, it doesn't really matter.
There we go. We got one more food metaphor.
There you go. There's a food metaphor. Well, awesome.
Food and football.
Food and football. I know. August can't come soon enough. I am ready for some football. I'm too much of a dad. Well, thank you, John. It was a pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
All right. Talk to you again.